I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
The names are out, the files are open, and Hollywood is shaking. Not metaphorically, not in the way entertainment journalists spin a PR crisis into a weekend news cycle. We are talking about something far more corrosive, something that has been moving underneath the surface of the most powerful industry in the world for decades. And the people who tried to warn you about it, they were laughed at, dismissed, buried. They are not laughing anymore. Years ago, this was whispered, back-channel conversations, quiet warnings passed between people who had seen too much and had too much to lose by saying it publicly. But now, figures like Jim Caviezel and Mark Wahlberg are not whispering. They are speaking in full sentences.
Exposed to sexual abuse. That's a breeding ground for trafficking.
On camera with names attached, and with the Epstein files cracking open like a fault line beneath the foundations of elite power, what they have been saying is starting to land differently. Let that sink in.
Big, dark mafia. And then what happens is...
The claim on the table is this. The lead actor of Sound of Freedom, in collaboration with one of Hollywood's most outspoken industry critics, has allegedly worked to bridge the gap between fictional narrative and real-world figures. According to public interviews and circulating reports, the list of names allegedly implicated includes major Hollywood players, not fringe figures, not industry outsiders, names that appear on award show stages and studio letterheads. But before we get there, you need to understand what Sound of Freedom actually is, because the film itself is the foundation of everything that follows. The story centers on Tim Ballard, a former Department of Homeland Security special agent who allegedly walked away from a government career to do something the system would not let him do inside its walls: infiltrate active child trafficking networks and bring children home. The film dramatizes those operations. It depicts exploitation, complicity, and institutional failure with enough detail to make audiences deeply uncomfortable.
Movies like this, documentaries like this, shows like this, there's a lot of people that don't want to do it because where are you going to platform?
But here is what Caviezel himself has stated publicly. What you see on screen is the sanitized version. The reality, according to him, is worse, significantly worse. Jim Caviezel was not a random casting choice. This is the actor who embodied Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. He carries a specific cultural weight, a specific moral gravity, and he did not take this role lightly. By his own account, he immersed himself in actual trafficking case files. He spoke with survivors. He spoke with investigators. He says the characters in the film are not invented from whole cloth. They are composites drawn from documented real-world investigations.
But that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real.
And when he describes the wealthy, powerful individuals he believes have shielded themselves from accountability, he does not speak in abstractions. Now this is where it gets uncomfortable. The film also features Mira Sorvino, an Academy Award-winning actress, and Bill Camp, one of the most respected character actors working today. This was not a low-budget passion project destined for obscurity. The expectation was streaming deals, awards consideration, mainstream media coverage. What it got instead was something that critics argue no legitimate market rejection can fully explain. Netflix passed, Hulu passed, Amazon passed. Platforms that have hosted some of the most graphic and controversial content in the history of streaming declined this particular film. Supporters of the film argue this was not a coincidence. They argue it was coordination, and they ask a pointed question. What is it about this specific subject matter, presented this specifically, that made the largest distribution networks in the world look away? But it gets worse, because the Walt Disney Company reportedly acquired the film, and then, according to public reporting, did nothing with it, buried it. No release, no statement, no explanation. Consider what that means for a moment. The company whose entire brand identity is built around children, around magic and innocence and protection, allegedly sat on a film about child trafficking without ever telling the public why. Let that sink in. Mark Wahlberg enters this narrative not as a supporting player, but as a corroborating voice. He has spoken publicly, according to reported interviews.
A lot of research on it, and according to all the research, it was way worse than that. Anything I should.
About manipulation and systemic abuse within the entertainment industry. His collaboration with Caviezel has been framed by observers not as two actors promoting a project, but as two industry insiders connecting on-screen fiction to documented off-screen patterns. Not conspiracy. Pattern. There is a difference, and that distinction matters. Then the Epstein files arrived. Previously sealed flight logs, financial connections, names, powerful names, names attached to media empires, political offices, and entertainment dynasties. dynasties. And as those names began to surface, people went back to what Caviezel and Wahlberg had been saying. They listened again, this time with new context. According to analysts following the story, the fear-driving silence around this subject is not prosecution. It is public exposure. It is the humiliation of having your name spoken aloud in a sentence that cannot be walked back. Sound of Freedom was eventually released independently, and it outperformed studio-backed films at the box office by a margin that should have generated significant media coverage. It did not.
Number one fear is public humiliation.
Mainstream outlets remained largely quiet. Supporters of the film point to that silence as evidence of something deliberate. Critics of that position say the film benefited from a specific audience and specific timing. Both things can be argued, but the gap between the film's performance and the coverage it received remains a documented fact. Oprah Winfrey's name has entered this conversation, and it is worth being precise about why. The question being raised is not casual. It centers on documented associations. Her publicly known friendship with Harvey Weinstein, her association with John of God, a spiritual figure later convicted of serious crimes, and a misconduct scandal involving staff at her leadership academy in South Africa. Taken individually, each of these might be dismissed. Taken together, critics argue they represent a systemic pattern that demands scrutiny rather than deference. Dwayne Johnson's response to questions connected to this narrative was, according to observers, notable for its intensity. A deleted social media post, denial-style messaging that some found disproportionate to the questions being asked. Whether that reaction reflects guilt, frustration, or something else entirely is not a conclusion this script is drawing. But the reaction itself has been noted, and people are asking why. What Caviezel ultimately argues is this.
The system is completely based on money.
The characters in the film are mirrors, not metaphors. The wealthy patrons shielding themselves, the media silence, the institutional protection, he claims these are not narrative devices. They are reflective of documented reality.
A lot of research on it, and according to all the research, it was way worse than that, anything I showed.
About manipulation and systemic abuse within the entertainment industry. His collaboration with Caviezel has been framed by observers not as two actors promoting a project, but as two industry insiders connecting on-screen fiction to documented off-screen patterns, not conspiracy. Pattern. There is a difference, and that distinction matters. Then the Epstein files arrived. Previously sealed flight logs, financial connections, names, powerful names, names attached to media empires, political offices, and entertainment dynasties. And as those names began to surface, people went back to what Caviezel and Wahlberg had been saying. They listened again, this time with new context. According to analysts following the story, the fear-driving silence around this subject is not prosecution. It is public exposure. It is the humiliation of having your name spoken aloud in a sentence that cannot be walked back. Sound of Freedom was eventually released independently, and it outperformed studio-backed films at the box office by a margin that should have generated significant media coverage. It did not.
I wanted to leave. And because I knew that I didn't want to work with him.
Yeah.
And he was getting scary.
Wahlberg, positioned as someone with decades inside the industry, has been described by supporters as corroborating that claim from the inside. And the Epstein documentation, according to those following it closely, is not introducing new allegations so much as connecting dots that were always there, just never visible at the same time. Mel Gibson raised similar concerns years earlier. He was called paranoid, conspiratorial, unstable. The same machinery that dismissed him then has been notably quieter lately. So here's the question that does not have a clean answer yet. If the files are open, if the names are surfacing, if the film that tried to show you what was happening was buried by the same industry it was implicating, then what exactly were they protecting? And for how long did they know?